I'm calling the meeting to order. Let us rise and pledge to the flag and have a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. I really want to commend Rebecca, Sue, and Julie. We are now, those of you who've been on council for some time know what a remarkable achievement this is. We're totally caught up with minutes.
Oh my.
So,
oh my.
I know. I will entertain a motion to approve the December 12th, 2023 minutes.
I move that we approve the December 12th, 2023 minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Marion, right? A motion to approve the January 2nd, 2024 council meeting minutes.
I will move to approve the January 2nd, 2024. Lost the year for a second.
Second.
Okay, was that Linda? All those in favor of both of them, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Citizens' requests or concerns. Would anyone like to address council? Oh, okay.
My name's Ed Fox. I live at 55 North Blue Street. I'm very pleased that they finally finished that project. And it looks pretty nice.
Good, good. Nice to know, thank you. At this point in the agenda, we are going to move up from the manager's report, item number B. So that's on the back of the agenda. K, manager's report. Item number B is the 2022 audit presentation. And maybe Chris, you would like to come up to the microphone, which I hope works.
All right, can everyone hear me okay? All right. Hi everyone, I'm Krista Gardner. I am a partner with SEK, CPAs and Advisors, and I am in our York office. So thank you for moving me up to the beginning of the meeting so I can make my trek back to York this evening. This is our first year doing the audit for the borough. We have been working diligently to get through our first year audit. First years of audits are always fun, and then you add some turnover and a lot of changes in a municipality, and it just adds even more layers of fun. But we are here and we are almost completely finished. You will see the document that I gave you this evening is a presentation type document. It does say draft on it. We are in the process of finalizing everything. So as soon as we finalize everything, which should be later this week, you'll have final documents that will be shared with you. That will include this presentation, as well as our communication letters, the final DCED report that will be submitted, and also your final financial statements. So you'll get a couple of documents from us that finalize 2022. We will send those all electronically and then also make any printed copies for anyone who would like those. So what I'm going to do is just a brief overview because I could talk forever on audits and on the borough, but I promise to keep it brief to give you just an idea of how the audit works, what an audit is, and essentially the results of 2022. So what I'm going to do is start on page 1. It's actually the third page, but at the bottom it says page 1. And this starts to talk about how an audit works. So our responsibilities as your independent auditor are to perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. Every financial audit has to be under generally accepted auditing standards. We then form and express an opinion about whether the financial statements are materially correct, fairly presented, and conform with what's called the modified cash basis of accounting. This is really important to understand when looking at your financial information. Because you're on the modified cash basis of accounting, you do not record revenue until you physically receive the money, and you do not record an expense until you actually pay that money. That's different from when you would record receivables, payables, have debt on the books, fixed assets on the books. This is a more simplistic, kind of like how you budget year to year, but it can be a little wonky when you're comparing year over year based on timing. So sometimes we will see some things that look skewed because maybe you made 2 payments in 1 year and no payments the next year. So just a reminder that that's how you report, is that cash basis of accounting. This is pretty common for a municipality your size in Pennsylvania, so it's not an issue, but I do like to remind or let people know that when you're looking at your financials, it can be different because of timing. And then we are required to communicate significant matters to you, which is what I'm doing now. I always like to remind people that an audit provides reasonable, not absolute assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. What that means is we were not here watching everything that happened during 2022. And during our audit, we do not test 100% of the transactions that occurred during that year. That would be almost impossible, very timely, and very costly. So it's our responsibility, as I'll get into in the next couple pages, to design our audit to give you that audit opinion. The other thing that I like to remind you about is an audit is not a control. So having an independent auditor come in and perform an audit is not an internal control. Internal controls are still important that essentially the staff and those with oversight need to take responsibility for. And an audit, a lot of times people say, well, we have an audit, it's okay. You know, our processes and procedures are good, we have an audit. An audit is not a control. So I do always like to make sure everyone's aware that having an audit does not relieve anyone involved in your processes and procedures of your responsibilities. On page 2 then, the borough is responsible for preparing and fairly presenting the financial statement information, designing, implementing, evaluating, and maintaining effective internal controls over all aspects of your financial reporting. During the audit, providing us with unrestricted access to anyone we might have questions for, or any supporting documentation we might want to look at. If there would have been any fraud, illegal acts, material weaknesses, or significant deficiencies, making us aware of those and we were not made aware of any. Subsequent events, if there's anything that happened after the year before the financial statements are done, making us aware of any significant changes that we would need to disclose to the reader. In our municipality world, that doesn't happen a lot, but if there'd be like a significant bond that would be taken out, a new building project, etc., we would consider that, but there's nothing at this point that has warranted itself as being significant to include. And then essentially everything I've got in here this evening is all wrapped up in a management representation letter, which is signed off by management as part of the finalization process. Page 3 then gets a little bit into how we perform the audit. So one thing that we talk about is controls. We are not required to test controls, but we are required to understand your controls. If we did not understand how you process your cash receipts, your cash disbursements, reconcile your bank accounts, prepare your monthly reports, it'd be hard for us to perform an effective audit. How would we come up with what areas could be of higher risk and what we should test? So that's where we start. Who's involved in what processes, what the processes are, what your revenue streams are, how many bank accounts you have, how do you reconcile them? That's where we start. From there, we have to put our auditor hat on and say what could go wrong. We're never saying something did go wrong, but that's how we do what's called a risk assessment. And that helps us identify how much of our testing we're going to do in what areas. So that's kind of how we develop that. And then the other piece of it is dollar amounts or materiality. And so we will do calculations, usually based on your receipts. That's your main driver of what you can do as a municipality, is your money coming in. And that's going to be different for each of your funds. So we actually will do a different calculation for each fund because they all operate differently. Based on that calculation, that's going to give us a threshold where over that threshold, we're going to test everything because it's material. Under that threshold, we're going to do a sample of the population to determine if we need to do any additional testing from there. So that's how we essentially put our audit process together to be able to give that audit opinion. And again, it's on us to determine how much we need to test in order to get to that point. Audit adjustments or journal entries are usually a part of the audit process, and I will actually speak to those in a couple of pages. Page 4 then is the audit results. So although I have draft on here, we are planning on this being an unmodified opinion. That is a clean opinion. That's the best opinion you can get. So no issues there as far as the audit opinion. So that's a thumbs up for the borough and its staff. Page 5, I'm going to go through the next couple of pages quickly, but essentially they are what I need to communicate to you. We, as your auditing firm, have complied with all ethics requirements, and we are independent of the borough. Significant accounting policies, how you record your transactions. There was really no change from prior years. So if you go and look at 2021 versus 2022, how you record your transactions, when you record them, again, that cash basis, no change from year to year. On page 6, there were really no difficulties encountered, no disagreements. Essentially everything that's required to be included, I've included in this presentation. And on page 7 is a bunch of additional legal information we need to include on there, but essentially says that we're not aware that the borough has gone and consulted with any other accounting firms based on discussions we've had, and that essentially anything that's required has been included in this presentation. Page 8 then gets into internal control matters. So when we think of internal controls, there are deficiencies in internal controls, and there are 3 essentially layers or levels. The top layer of deficiency is called a material weakness. There's that material word again. Has essentially could skew someone's opinion of reading your information because it's materially incorrect. We drop down a level, that then becomes a significant deficiency. Not material, but still significant. So it's a significant deficiency. And then we kind of have other deficiencies or other matters, best practices, suggestions, etc. So on page 9, if you flip to page 9, we have identified 2 what we consider material weaknesses in internal control for the borough. The first one is in regards to material audit adjustments. So those are the journal entries that were proposed as part of our audit process. Examples, or essentially I've listed all of them on here. Those entries included recording the audit entries from the prior year, investment earnings, an ARPA funds transfer, which I'll talk about, adding a new investment account, expense reclassifications, the classification of a sale of property, and developer escrow activity. So what we do is we propose these journal entries and we went over them with staff and management throughout the process and also at a wrap-up meeting, and essentially say these are the adjustments we're proposing to correctly state your financial information. And we always need to get the head nod of, yes, we agree, we take ownership and we're going to go ahead and do those entries. We can't say you have to do them, we have to propose them. Now at the end of the day, there's always supporting documentation where we say, okay, we really think you need to record this because of X, Y, Z. The combination of all those entries are material to your financial statements, and that's why it's listed here as a material weakness. Why that's important is throughout the year, you get financial information to make decisions on. During the audit process, when we have a lot of adjustments that change that financial information, that can have an impact on the decisions you have made and will make going forward. So again, that material word essentially means that the threshold, the dollar amount of the combination of those journal entries is high enough that we've considered it material, a material weakness in the internal controls of the borough. So this is something we actually talked about at an audit wrap-up meeting, and I think there's a good opportunity for the borough to correct a lot of these items going forward, that maybe next year we won't have to have this material weakness in internal control. And then kind of related to some of those entries is the bank reconciliation process. So what we have found is the bank reconciliation process, I think, is, for lack of better words, a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, and the accounting software doesn't help with that, which we'll get to that on the next page. But one item we ran into was there was, on the bank reconciliations, there was a related entry that had not been posted in the accounting system. So the reconciliation did not tie to the accounting system, and then also reconciling items are being grouped together in one big dollar amount as opposed to individually cleared on the bank reconciliation. Now at the end of the day, there was no concern as far as money missing or things not being reconciled or anything like that, but it's just when you think about controls, there are 2 types. There are preventative controls and detective controls. Preventative controls are the best because they prevent something from happening. They're hard to put in place though. So a lot of times we're relying on detective controls, finding something, and that can mean finding errors. We're not always just talking about fraud. Your bank reconciliation is one of the most common controls that you have. And if we're grouping items together, or we're not posting all of the transactions to move money between different buckets in the system where they're not lining up, that just allows for errors not to be found or items not to be captured. That control is not effective. So again, this is not us saying there's money missing or anything. When we start to talk about cash accounts, bank accounts, people get worried. It's really the reconciliation process. We got comfortable at the end of the day with the reconciliation end result, but I think the way it's being reconciled, it's not effectively allowing you to use that as a control. And it could be a material item. The dollar amounts that we were also seeing related to this were material dollar amounts. And the example to this was that there was a new investment account that was opened up and money was just moved to an investment account to earn more money. Well, that entry just wasn't made in the accounting system. So it was just all in one bucket as opposed to being pulled out into a second bucket. So just to kind of give you a little bit of clarification on that item. I'll pause there because I know those were two big items that I just went over. Any questions before I move forward? I know I can talk a little fast and give a lot of information.
No, I think you've been.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Happy to give more detail. On page 10 then are just a couple of other suggestions. So I alluded to one of them, the accounting software. Now I can't stand here and say your accounting software doesn't work. But just from some interactions and speaking with staff in the payroll process, the bank reconciliation process, and a couple other reporting, etc., it might be worthwhile looking at other accounting software packages. You might actually even be able to save some money depending on what you go with. But I've just seen some options out there that I think would probably make your reporting and your day-to-day a little bit easier on the staff to make it more efficient and effective. So just a suggestion, and I said, hey, I'm willing to sit down and chat about what I see. I work with a lot of governments in Pennsylvania and Maryland, so happy to give some suggestions to look at. Fund account structure and analysis. This kind of goes hand in hand with the accounting software. Right now you have essentially all of your bank accounts pulled together in one. That can get a little messy when it comes to the reconciliation process, so just a suggestion to consider maybe having separate bank accounts. Also the way your fund structure is in that accounting software, there's some consolidated funds that maybe you don't need. Again, just looking for ways to make it a more efficient process. And then the last one is the escrow developer activity tracking. My understanding based on our conversation here is what I'm going to suggest is how it was once done and at some point it got changed. But we essentially, if you have a developer come in that has to put escrow money down for certain legal or engineering fees, that money be put into essentially like a liability account, and then when those bills are paid, that money comes out of that liability account. So that activity really should not hit the borough's revenues or expenses because it's not your money and they're not your expenses. How it's being done currently is all of the money coming in from those developers is going into your miscellaneous revenue account, and then all of the bills being paid are going into the expense accounts. So at the end of the day, you net everything together, which is what we did for DCED presentation on your financials. But again, I think it would just be much easier to have it in one account and potentially have an Excel spreadsheet or something that you're tracking. Because in theory, you should have what every developer, their balance is at every time, because you don't want to be fronting the bill or fronting any money for those developers because they're not your expenses. So that was another suggestion that we had talked about, is just looking at that process. And again, it sounds like at one point that's how it was being done. So I think there's some movement to going back to that process to make it more efficient. So then on pages 11, 12, and 13, a couple of quick highlights as far as the financial information. Page 11 is the general fund. And what I've given you here is just 2 years of snapshot of information. I'm not going to go down through every line here, but obviously wanted to provide the information to you. The 2022 revenues of the general fund were $5.1 million versus about $4.5 million the year before. And the expenses for 2022 were about $4.3 million versus about $4.5 million the year before that. So your net change in fund balance was a positive $854,000 for 2022. Now, I have to talk about a caveat here, which kind of skews that information. In 2021, you got your first ARPA distribution of, let's just call it $475,000, it was somewhere around there, $475,000. In 2021, you got that money. It came into the general fund and you transferred it out to the sewer capital fund, because initially your plan was to use that money on sewer capital projects. Once the Department of Treasury came out, gave more information, clarified some things, honestly made it easier for municipalities of your size, it was decided, you know what, we don't have to use it on sewer capital projects. We're going to use it on our general fund expenses, which was allowed after some clarification. So what ended up happening is in 2021, the ARPA funds came into the general fund and were transferred out to the sewer capital fund. In 2022, we're showing them come back into the general fund so they can be used for general fund purposes. And then you also got your second payment in 2022. So that's where it's going to look a little funky as far as your revenues being higher because you had the second payment of ARPA as well as that transfer back into funds. It does not duplicate revenue though because it's simply in a transfer between funds. So that does not duplicate total revenue of the borough. So that's just a wonky item to point out there when you're looking at 21 and 22 between those funds. The other thing to kind of note, a couple of big items, there was a tax increase for 2022, so we did see a little bit of uptick in your taxes there. There was a sale of a property that showed up, that was about $140,000, that was kind of a one-time item in 2022. And overall, as far as the expenses, there was an uptick in your salaries and wages because there were some additional positions in 2022 versus 2021, as well as some raises that were received. Page 12 and 13, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I did just want to give you a snapshot of the other funds. I don't want to leave them out, but this just gives you an idea of where your other funds ended up 2022 versus 2021. Just a reminder, you've got your sewer fund, your solid waste fund, your sewer capital fund, and then your ESA or your crossing guard funds. Those are all considered proprietary funds on page 12. And then on page 13, you've got your capital reserve fund, your park fund, and then your highway aid or liquid fuels fund. And those are other governmental funds in addition to your general fund. So I know I threw a lot at you there, but I do like to make sure that there's a good understanding of what it is we do and what your financials really mean when you're taking a look at those. Again, once we get this finalized later this week, we'll have documents over to you and we'll start 2023's audit. So
Wonderful.
Any questions?
Thank you very much. That was extremely informative.
Good.
And I want to remind those of us on council who have been here for a while, and staff members and also our loyal audience, that since 2022, we have had 3 borough managers, and we're advertising for our 3rd finance officer. So there are things that have gotten perhaps a little misplaced in the shuffle. But we certainly appreciate your report, and you brought it in right at 20 minutes, as I used to do. And I don't know, Rebecca, do you have anything to add?
No, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming and giving this presentation tonight, and let you all know that we had a great conversation this week at our wrap-up meeting about ways that we're going to move forward this year and really looking into the software options that Krista has recommended to make our processes more efficient and to help staff be able to do these things a little more error-free with some adjustments there. So we're looking forward to bringing those things forward to you all in the next couple of months.
Thank you. And safe drive to you.
Thank you.
I should say, are there any questions from the audience? And I do realize you don't have the report in front of you, so you had to listen to it. But are there any questions from anyone? Well, safe drive going back to York.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and I'm sure I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Safe home.
Well, we're going to move along to reports of boards, committees, and commissions, and we have a whole bunch of stuff under the Civil Service Commission. But before we go into your items, Linda, do you have anything from Blue Rock?
I do not this evening.
Okay. Any other boards and commissions? Okay. Tony, I guess Tony Hightower is going to present all of it to us.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
And do I need to come up to the microphone?
That would be...
Tony, that would be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's much better for those who are watching.
I was going to stand next to Ken. So Ken Eckert from our commission is also here today. Ken was going to kick me if I needed to move along or if I missed something. So please feel free to kick me or ask a question if I miss something on the agenda. But we do have a number of items on the agenda, and I'll start with the year-end report for the activities of the Millersville Civil Service Commission in 2023. So during 2023, the commission took the following actions. We had Ken Eckert sworn in as an alternate for the commission. We revised the job posting and application for police officer patrolmen. Those were revised to bring them up to current standards and to make our postings for the year effective. We advertised openings 3 times for 3 patrol officer vacancies that occurred in 2023. The commission facilitated the activities for promotion of Officer Kavanaugh and Officer Reynolds to sergeant, and promotion of Detective Sergeant Scott to lieutenant. Mary Lyons and Deb Sweeto were sworn in as alternates for the commission this year in April. The rules and regulations for the Borough Civil Service Commission were revised and updated. That occurred in March.
Tony,
Yes.
do we need to, does council, would you let me know if there are any of these items we need to take action on?
Yes, I will. And in this first portion, in this report, there are no actions that require, or no action required. There is one item regarding the amended rules and regulations that we'll address for a separate item on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
No action for these ones. Let's see, and so Spencer Rios was hired as a patrol officer this year, and also Patrick Giberson and Steve Althouse were hired later in the year, and their hiring is conditional upon completion of the police academy, which they're attending this month. So 3 hires in 2023. Mary Lyons and I attended the civil service training in Harrisburg. That was Civil Service Commission training. The commission revised the oral interview process and interview questions for patrol officer, sergeant, and lieutenant in September this year. And again, that was to bring them up to current standards and make them more appropriate for current practices in comparison to other commissions and other municipalities. And I went a little bit out of order, so that concludes the activities for Civil Service Commission in 2023. Any questions on that report? Anything on my list?
Can you tell me the name of the 3 officers? Spencer, Patrick, and who?
Spencer, Patrick, and Steve. Steve Althouse is the 3rd. Any other questions? Okay. So I'll continue with the agenda items. The next item on the agenda is a last year item, and that's related to the rules and regulations that we updated in May of last year. So it's come to our attention that those need a further administrative step to be put into the Borough Code, and that so those were approved by the Civil Service Commission and presented to the council. Council approved them. A resolution needs to be approved to put those into the Borough Code, and that's something that Rebecca brought to our attention. So, the commission, proposes that the council approve a resolution to implement the amended rules and regs from May 11th of last year.
I will make a motion to create that resolution as stated, and I would need a second. Marlene second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And the next item on the agenda is a proposal, and this proposal is based on the eligibility and expected retirements of 2 officers in May of this year. So the commission proposes the commencement of advertising and creation of an eligibility list for those 2 openings that we expect in May. So that would get the ball rolling now. The Police Academy availability is in January and July. That would facilitate a July class. So we propose that to the council for moving forward with advertising and commencing development of an eligibility list.
I have one motion for that.
Say, we request a motion.
I will make a motion that, as we, move forward with advertising for the position.
Second.
Because I can keep going.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. So, that's exactly what we need. We need the advertisement. We need council approval to advertise and to move forward with creation of our eligibility list.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
All right, thank you very much. The next step, or the next step in our process, we did hold our reorganization meeting. We held it last week, and we do have a vacancy on the commission due to Susan Wallace's term expiring and not continuing. The commission proposes that Ken Eckert be appointed to full membership. Ken is currently an alternate, so we propose to the council that Ken Eckert be appointed as a full member of the commission to fill the vacancy.
And I can understand why Ken has filled in almost the whole time as a full-time member.
Yes.
But as I explained to Ken before the meeting, that will go before the personnel committee.
Understand?
Okay. And I believe the first personnel committee meeting is February 13th.
Okay.
So, Ken, you should send to the borough a letter of your interest and mention the fact that your Civil Service Commission has recommended you. Okay?
Okay, understand. So we'll present at the personnel committee meeting.
Yes,
Is that correct?
and until we would move Ken, if that be the case, then we don't have a vacancy in the alternate position, the third alternate position.
That's
But
correct.
that too will go before the Personnel Advisory Committee. And you
And
could do that the same night.
Okay, yeah, that'll be just for the council. Once Ken gets moved or promoted to full member, we'll have a vacancy in the alternate position, and by that time, commission will have recommendations to fill that position, but I believe we'll also have to advertise that position. So, that'll be for the next personnel committee meeting. Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is the same. It's to fill the alternate vacancy, which would follow. And then comes a proposal to council to update the current Civil Service Commission rules and regulations. As we reviewed at the beginning of the year, we identified two changes that need to be made. These were previously correct. When we made the change in May, a couple of items were inadvertently changed, and they're not functional for our rules and regulations. So the first one is a proposal to revise section 2.1 to add 3 alternate members, and our proposal is we go back to the wording that existed prior to the May 2023 change. Current regulations do not have a provision for alternates.
But we did create the third alternate position.
We did create the third alternate
But we
position.
never put it.
Well, so we created the third alternate position, and it appears that when the final version went through and approved, that was overwritten by the standard Pennsylvania Civil Service Commission guidance that didn't have those alternates in there.
Well, actually, I thought what it said was we could have up to 3 alternates. I thought those were the state guidelines, and
So-
we had 2.
Yeah, so currently, as approved in our approved guidelines, that has been removed. So, inadvertently, not
You wanna
sure
put it back
how,
in.
we want to put it back in.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you need something from us?
We just need your approval to amend the rules to be.
Then I make a motion.
Well,
go ahead.
sorry, can I just butt in a little bit here?
Please.
So the reason why we're doing that resolution at the end is to include both of those new
Oh,
changes.
yes,
They're
okay.
both in
Okay.
it. So
Yes,
can you
let me
go through
describe the
both of
second
them
one.
and then
Yes.
we can
Thank
do
you,
that?
Rebecca.
Perfect.
So I'll move to the second one. The first one, just to make it simpler, is to go back to the verbiage that was previously approved with the third alternate, so it'll be easy for
Right.
minutes. And then the second item requesting to approve is for our reorganization meeting. Currently, that meeting is required to be held on the first Monday in February. We propose a change to make that read on or before the first Monday in February.
Well, actually, I think what the Borough Code says is that it needs to be, your commission needs to reorganize on even years first meeting of the Civil Service Commission on even years. And I'm not that smart. I read that out of question and answers in the Borough magazine. Someone had questioned when the Civil Service Commission should organize, and there was even a quote to the Borough Code. So you might want to go back on that one. It says 2024, 2026, even years, the first meeting of the Civil Service Commission that is held in even years must be a reorganizational meeting.
And our guidance has more specific wording that says that first meeting.
I'm just going by the Borough magazine that I just got.
Okay. Understand. So, but I don't understand the conflict. If that says it needs to be the first.
And your first meeting is always in February.
Well, our guidance says it needs to be on the first Monday in February. We propose that we make that on or before the first meeting in February to allow.
I don't think that's the problem. The problem, though, is with the even number of years.
Even number of years is a component of our
Got it.
rules also.
Got it. Oh,
Yep,
okay
yep.
then.
So that's there.
Okay then.
Yeah,
So-
that's the only wording changing is just on or before. Everything else
Okay.
is the same.
Great.
Absolutely, yes. So to be clear, the even number years is a component of our
Okay.
regulation. So
I
we
got
just make it on our people.
I'll even make a motion.
Outstanding.
All right, a second.
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded.
All right.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Tony? Looks to me like you got through it all.
Yep, that is it. Well, thank you very much, and we look forward to another busy year. And I would like to thank Chief Markovich for his partnership in, it's definitely a team effort with the police department. And
Thank you guys.
it's
It's a lot of work.
awesome.
It's a lot of work.
Thank you very
And
much.
I think, I want to commend the Civil Service Commission, and I think Jeff can go along with this. You guys have really stepped up to the plate over the past 2 years. And you're doing a wonderful job, aren't they?
Yeah, and we got at least one more to go. Let's
Yeah.
finish
And
it out.
we thank you for your support, because having our full, it's definitely a team effort, and having our full bench of alternates has made it possible. So
Right.
thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Now we'll go with that.
Well, I want to go on to reports of council committees, and since there are no council committees quite yet, there will be no reports. I have put together committees with chairs and vice chairs, and I believe I have contacted every single person on council. Marion, did you get my email?
No, I didn't.
Oh, well, I did send you an email stating the committees you were on and asking, if you had feedback, and you're the only one who didn't give me any feedback.
That's
But I think I did tell you what committees you
Yes.
were on. So everybody should be aware of that. We're going to keep the same committee schedule. There are lots of ramifications to that schedule because we've worked this out over the years so that other boards and commissions have meeting times. So the second Wednesday of the month is the Personnel Committee meeting. The third Wednesday of the month is Finance, and the third Thursday of the month, boy, that's a mouthful. That's gonna be Public Works and Public Safety. Basically, it's the same as will be on the website and will be advertised. The committees will also be advertised as to, under their states, who is on what committee. We generally do not give out public phone numbers or even email addresses. Each of you, even the new people now, should have a Millersville Borough address. And all of ours, mine, for example, is mgerber@millersvilleborough.org. And Chris's is chubs@, and all of you have a similar email address that you can be reached by members of the public. You can also call into the borough office with a concern and give your name and contact information, and perhaps one of the staff people or one of the council people will get back to you. Any questions on that? Well, then the mayor has a report.
Thank you very much. I just want to echo what President Gerber said about our Civil Service Commission. I remember going back several years, Civil Service Commission had absolutely nothing to do, never had to meet, and reorganized every 2 years. The last 2 years, this group has done some phenomenal work, meeting almost every single month to get accomplished what we need to get accomplished for our police department. And I want to thank council for approving the commission to move forward getting things advertised, because we have 2 people who can retire in April. The 2 gentlemen who are in the academy won't be back until July, which means then they have to go through field training, which is going to be another month. Hopefully when we advertise, we get some people who are qualified police officers in the state, we can get them trained and get them on the street. But we're gonna be in the same boat we've been in the last 2 years with another 2 officers short. So I'm hopeful we'll get some good applicants of qualified people who we can get on the street. Jeff, do you have anything?
Nope, I don't have the stats tonight. Next one.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're not gonna have Millersville University report.
Dr. DeSantis sends his regrets.
We do have one?
No, it's just that he sends his regrets.
Oh,
He's
okay.
home with sick family tonight.
Well, and we don't have a current representative from Millersville University. So at the, do you know anything about that, Rebecca?
I believe that they are working on
Good.
getting one.
Okay. And you want to coordinate that with our meeting, okay. Penn Manor, this is not a regular council meeting. The next regular, it is an advertised meeting, and it's our first regular meeting of the year. But normally, our big business meeting is the 4th Tuesday, and in this case, it's going to be January 23rd. So I presume that our representatives will be here at that time. Manager's report. I think we pretty much need just a motion for the first one.
That's correct, right? So if you
I will move
good, perfect.
that we approve the advertisement for the monthly council meetings to be included with committees, boards, and commissions advertisements of meetings.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And I know nothing about the next one down, it's number C, Rebecca.
Sure. So it has come up that a purchase that was planned for this year's budget in our sewer department came in just a little bit over what was budgeted for. In the sewer department, they did budget for a new blower. Don't ask me exactly what that does, but Les could not be here tonight.
You don't
But
even want to think about what it's blowing.
It blows.
yes, so it was budgeted for $60,000. Unfortunately, just due to the price slightly increasing from 2023 to 2024, the quote has now come in at $21,600. So we are looking for the board's approval to go about $1,600 over the budget to make that purchase of the new blower.
This gives me an opportunity to put my philosophy into action. Do we need it?
Yes,
Okay. Can we afford it?
yes.
Where's the money coming from?
We have enough in other parts of this budget to be able to make this work.
Sewer department.
Yes.
Okay. I will entertain a motion. So moved,
Second.
and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Now, I'm gonna go to C, because I already did form committees, and that's my prerogative. You know, Borough Council President is one of 7 when it comes to voting. The only real power I have is informing committees, making a seating chart, and running the agenda for the meetings. And that's already been taken care of. The other 2 items, I have to admit, to having egg all over my face on this one. At our reorganization meeting, we appointed Rebecca as tax collector. In fact, I even spoke to her about getting a bond and all of that. And then it was brought to my attention that we had an elected tax collector, and I knew that, but we never got his resignation. So he has since resigned, and which was his intent all along. So the first thing we have to do is have a motion to accept the tax collector resignation.
I move that we accept the tax collector's resignation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And now, we will appropriately have a resolution to appoint the borough manager as tax collector. So I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make that one. Oh,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, all right. I will move that we appoint the borough manager as tax collector.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I don't think we have any unfinished business. And I know we don't need an executive session. And my favorite part, adjournment.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Did you second?
Yes.
We check this.
Oh, absolutely.
Wednesday, and see you on Thursday.